Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into one of the coolest, most elegant processes happening in our bodies right now, excitation contraction coupling. It's the amazing microscopic chain of events that turns a simple thought, an electrical signal from a nerve, into the actual physical force of a muscle moving.
So, let's start with a really fundamental question. How does a thought, the decision to pick something up or take a step, actually turn into a physical action? Well, the secret is buried deep inside your muscle cells, in a process that is just unbelievably fast and incredibly precise.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. The first step is what you could call the spark of movement. It all kicks off when an electrical signal, what's called an action potential, zips down from your brain through a nerve and arrives right at the surface of a muscle fiber. You can almost picture it like a work order showing up at the main gate of this huge factory. Okay, but here's the catch. That signal, that work order, is on the outside of the factory at the cell membrane. The actual machinery that does all the work, the myofibrils, is located way deep inside. So for a muscle to contract with any kind of power, that order has to get to every single corner of the factory floor at pretty much the exact same time. So how on earth does it do that?
Well, the solution is just brilliant. Our muscles have this incredibly specialized internal plumbing system that makes this whole rapid-fire communication possible. Let's take a look.
First up, meet the T-tubules. And what's so cool about these is they aren't separate things. They're literally the outer membrane of the cell, just tunneling its way deep inside the muscle fiber. Think of them like the factory's internal communication network, a series of pipes that deliver that work order from the surface to every single workstation inside instantly. Now, nestled right up against this communication system is something called the sarcoplasmic reticulum, or just the SR for short. If the T-tubules are the message carriers, the SR is the factory's massive parts warehouse. It's this intricate web that wraps all around the machinery, and it's packed to the brim with the one ingredient you absolutely need for contraction: calcium. So the takeaway here is that they have totally different but perfectly coordinated jobs. The T-tubules, they're all about delivering the signal deep into the cell. And the sarcoplasmic reticulum, its job is to store the calcium sitting right next to the machinery it's about to activate. They're two parts of a beautifully integrated system ready to go. All right, this is where the magic really happens. We've got the signal in the T-tubule, and we've got all that calcium locked away in the SR warehouse. So how does that electrical signal unlock the warehouse doors? Okay, here's how the trigger works. As that electrical zap travels down the T-tubules, the change in voltage gets picked up by these special sensor proteins. They're called dihydropyridine receptors. Think of them as scanners on the delivery tube. Now, these scanners are physically connected, like with a tiny string, to the doors on the SR warehouse. Those doors are called ryanodine receptors, and when the scanner detects the signal, it changes shape and literally yanks the door open. It's an amazing little mechanical system.
And with those warehouse doors flung wide open, wow. What happens next is just dramatic and unbelievably fast. We get a massive, sudden flood of that critical ingredient we were talking about.
Suddenly, millions upon millions of calcium ions, which were crammed together in super high concentration inside the SR, just pour out into the fluid right where the muscle machinery is. And this sudden flood of calcium, that is the final command. It's the signal that tells the muscle proteins, okay, grab on and pull. And just to give you a sense of scale here, the concentration of calcium around those fibrils shoots up by as much as 500 times. I mean, this is not a trickle. It is an absolute tidal wave of calcium, and it guarantees that the muscle responds immediately and powerfully. And get this, the speed is just breathtaking. In a typical muscle, this entire event, this calcium pulse, from the moment it's released to the moment the cleanup starts, lasts for only about 1/20th of a second. I mean, you can blink and miss it hundreds of times over. That's the time scale we're working with here. Okay, so a muscle contraction is awesome, but it's pretty useless if you can't relax and then do it again, right? So just as quickly as all that calcium was dumped out, it has to be cleaned up and put back in the warehouse. The whole system needs to reset for the next signal. Let's see how that works. The hero of this whole cleanup operation is a protein called the sarcopump. You can think of it as the factory's tireless cleanup crew. These pumps are embedded all over the walls of the SR, and they are constantly working, actively grabbing calcium ions and pumping them back inside.
You might be wondering, how does the SR hold so much calcium? Well, it gets a little help from another protein called calsequestrin. Inside the SR, it basically acts like a calcium sponge, grabbing onto the ions and holding them.
This is what allows the warehouse to store such an enormous amount of calcium, keeping it ready for the next pulse. So let's put that whole reset process together. The sarcopumps are furiously pulling calcium out of the fluid. As it gets pumped back into the SR, calsequestrin grabs onto it, making room for even more. Pretty soon, the calcium level around the fibrils drops back down to almost nothing. The muscle proteins let go of each other, and the muscle fiber relaxes, perfectly reset and ready for the next command.
And there you have it. From that initial spark of an electrical signal, to the flood of calcium, to that super fast cleanup and reset, this whole elegant cycle is the fundamental mechanism behind every single move you make, every word you speak. It's the very foundation of action itself.
It's just incredible, isn't it? To think that this microscopic ballet, this perfectly coordinated dance of electricity and proteins and ions is happening trillions of times a day inside of you without you ever thinking about it. It really makes you wonder what other amazing feats of engineering are hiding in plain sight, right inside our own bodies.